Hello and welcome to Cheat Code Radio, episode 1, the pilot episode. It's the first one, and hopefully it won't be the only one. I'm your host, Nicholas Downie, assistant editor-in-chief for the lordsofgaming.net, and also host of the Gaming Perspective podcast, and I'm joined by...
And I'm Ivan Siler, aka Anchorman V2, host of the Multiverse Show, and together we are Cheat Code Radio. So let's kick this bastard off.
Oh, hell yeah, Bastard on a PG-13 show. Hell yeah, I love it. So this is going to be a great show. We're going to have a lot of fun. We've got some pre-sent in questions from people that kind of helped us along with this and, enjoyed our idea so far anyway. We'll see how the execution goes and everything else. But Ivan, you have questions to lead us off and kind of guide our discussion before we get into Ubisoft. So take it away.
Yep. All right. So our first question was sent in. So the question is as follows. According to Kojima, he doesn't seem to approve of the term director's cut for Death Stranding. Seems like it was Sony's idea. What's the deal with that? Sent in by Lord Snyder Cut.
Lord Snyder Cut. Oh boy. So yeah, I'll kind of field this one first. So I think it kind of makes sense that Kojima doesn't like the director's cut angle. It makes a lot of sense to me.
I mean, does it though? Like, I felt like it was the opposite for at least for that, because it was like, okay, he was gushing over. Actually, no, the Snyder Cut. He was gushing over. Oh, that's clever.
Yeah.
That's a clever.
Yeah.
No, but he was gushing over the whole Snyder Cut thing beforehand, and so like we all know Kojima's like a big director or a film buff, and so like director's cut makes sense for that. But yeah,
yeah, but see, the thing is like traditionally when you think of a director's cut and you bring up the Snyder Cut, which is a perfect example, that was a film that was hacked to pieces and kind of lost the original vision, right? So a director's cut often portrays a different portrays the story in a different way, whereas with Death Stranding's director's cut, it's more adding additional things to the pre-existing story. He's not trying to retcon anything he did or that might have been cut or anything like that. And I think that's part of the reason why he was kind of like, I don't like the word director's cut, because in film it's a lot different in film, right? Traditionally, anyway. I'm not much of a film buff, but
oh yeah, like in film, most of the time the studio has a big influence on whatever they're working on. Like, I mean, the Snyder Cut's the most popular one, but like another movie that I always go back to is like Daredevil. When Daredevil came out with Ben Affleck, that movie got hacked literally to pieces. The film itself that's left over is terrible, but if you watch the director's cut of the film, it's excellent. It has important scenes that kind of frame the rest of the movie, and it just get an extra level that you don't get in the original. And like you were saying, actually Kojima even backed that up. What you're saying, he was saying that there is that whole impression. It comes off like you cut things from the game, and I mean, these are all the things that are included are more like, they're extra scenes or extra abilities, like what they're doing, like a drag race strip or something like that.
yeah.
It's like, that's random. But it looks interesting at least, and like it doesn't come off like these are things that were cut from the game. I mean, unless Sony really did do that, but yeah, I think it gives the wrong impression about that.
Yeah, it feels more like, and I don't have a lot of knowledge in film, but I'll use like the Lord of the Rings series as an example. Like their extended editions gave you more scenes, but didn't, like, the original version didn't take away from anything. It was just more if you really loved it. And like Death Stranding feels more like an extended edition than a director's cut necessarily.
Yeah, that might be a better mentality for it, but the fact that they have Ghost of Tsushima coming out also, and they're calling that the director's cut, this makes it sound like this is a naming convention that Sony came up with.
Oh,
absolutely. Like, we're gonna get more director's cuts of everything.
Absolutely. Even Herman Hulst tweeted out that he was really excited for for people to see the director's cuts that they were working on, and he used a plural. So, and I don't think they'll stop with Death Stranding and Ghost of Tsushima, I think we'll definitely see something like a Last of Us Part 2 director's cut. And definitely probably some other games like like they won't do Final Fantasy VII remake because they already did the Integrate thing with some more DLC and everything else. They didn't call it the director's cut, but that's more of a Square Enix
Yeah.
convention than anything else. But yeah,
Yeah,
I
they can't do Spider-Man because they've already basically done that.
yeah.
But yeah, they didn't call it director's cut. But Last of Us, I think we both could agree Last of Us Part 2 is getting a director's cut.
Oh, that is a slam dunk in my opinion. Like, and I understand the criticisms around using director's cut. Like, I understand why someone like Kojima wouldn't necessarily like the term director's cut for these games, but like the word remastered is a dirty word now because of, all the quote unquote remasters we had in 2013, 2014, 2015. And when you're constantly being accused of making films instead of games, why not just fully commit to the bit, basically?
Yeah. Especially when you have a very heavy story focus.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it makes perfect sense to do that. So, but it's a weird naming convention. I was even talking to our mutual friend Samuel Tolbert about that too. We were talking about how it just the naming convention sounds dirty. I wish they used something else, but I mean, I get it. I mean, there's only so many things you can say. But I mean, like you know this, like we've known each other long enough. I've been complaining against the remaster trend for so long. But yeah, like some people have just totally dirtied the word, like you said. Like what was it? Uh,
Prototype.
prototype.
Yeah, prototype.
Just the same thing. Like it's literally the same game, and they did nothing to it.
Yeah.
Or I think the worst ones was Ultimate Alliance 1 when Activision brought that over. Little known fact of that with that game, they actually had a 1080p mode from the very beginning. It would run like crap, but they had a 1080p mode. So all they did was just uncap it. It's like, all right, cool, just do what you got to do. That's it. Like total garbage. I'm tired of the whole remaster thing, and I think I still stick by my original rules. Like the game's got to be at least 10 years old
Mm-hmm.
to before you even consider a remaster. Because it's like, okay, like BioShock. I feel like the BioShock collection was probably the best remaster, specifically the first game, where
Mm-hmm.
it was they didn't do anything crazy to it, but they updated it and made it timeless as a result. And I
Yeah.
love that.
I'm really like I'm okay with like games that are like 10 years before doing a remaster like the BioShock collection. And I'm also okay with something like Final Fantasy VII Remake. Like I'm not a big Final Fantasy guy, but what they did with that of combining like the modern aesthetics that people are used to with the classic aspects of the game and bring it all together in a new kind of package. I really admire that kind of thing. Maybe it doesn't need to be broken into 3 episodes or games or whatever it's going to turn into,
What
but
do you mean? Does it need to be? We can always use more money.
yeah, but I want to give them credit for the quality that they put into Final Fantasy VII Remake because it was incredibly high quality, and I'm really excited for Death Stranding's director's cut. Like I'm a sucker for Kojima in general, but it was interesting to see him kind of push back against this publicly, even a little bit. But people need to be careful reading too much into Kojima's tweets because once again, I don't know if his English account is run by somebody or it's him running it through a translator. I don't know how his social media works, but I know a lot. There's been a lot of stories written wrongly from misquoted Kojima tweets. So,
I mean, he's got to speak English pretty well. I mean, he's handling the whole Blue Box account pretty well, right?
oh my god. No, we're not doing this. We're not doing this even a little bit. This isn't okay. I am not okay. Um, but of course, we'll segue into the next question.
Yep. Next question comes up from. All right. Says this actually comes from our good friend Fullbring47. We keep hearing about how Persona 5 is inevitably coming to Xbox, but when is it actually coming? F you. Okay.
Tell me how you really feel. Uh, all right. So yeah, we've been hearing about Persona on Xbox now for at least a year. It feels like now, roughly, give or take.
Yeah, maybe. Oh, yeah, it's been big
Basic,
summer of
yeah,
COVID.
yeah. Basically, when Persona 4 Golden went to Steam, that's when things really started to pick up steam in terms of
Uh,
an Xbox port. Now I'm gonna put a little bit of my wisdom cap on here, and I'm gonna tell people, we had that whole story that came out this week about, it's Persona's 25th anniversary, and they've got 7 unannounced projects and everything else, and everyone jumped all over the place, going, "Well, Persona 6, and then an anime series, and blah 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 blah." I would almost guarantee you, there's other ports included in that announcement. So I think you're going to see like Persona 5 or Persona 5 The Royal on Xbox. You're going to see Persona
no.
no.
I believe you mean Persona 5 Platinum, Persona 5 Golden. Oh, that's how you take it. Persona 5 Diamond. Like they're just gonna come up with random stuff. And
You think so?
they're gonna do a Pokemon style, like, oh, this one has a certain expansion and this one has a different expansion. You have to buy both. $70 each.
No. But yeah, I definitely think you're going to see Persona 4 Golden go to Xbox. I think you'll see Persona 5 go to Xbox. And, all those games will come to Steam. There's rumors of Persona. I want to just preface this. I've never played a Persona game, so my only knowledge is what I've read. So I think Persona 3 or whatever that game was called, I don't know if it was called Persona 3 or not. There was rumors of that getting like a remake and whatnot. And of course, Persona 4 Golden still isn't on PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 5. It's on Steam and Vita, so I imagine we'll get a PlayStation port of that sooner rather than later. But I think this is, I think Atlas is starting to realize that, there's a bigger audience out there. We saw that with the news this week with Sega fighting with the talent agency for the lead actor in Judgment. The talent agency doesn't want Sega doing a PC port, but Sega is quite, determined in keeping things going and putting things on as many platforms as possible. And with Sega owning Atlas, I think it's just a matter of time.
Yeah. I was trying to look for whatever they announced it was going to PC, but I can't find anything at least immediately. But could be just a scenario is they may be intending for it to come to Xbox, but it may be one of those situations where Sony paid for exclusivity for some reason, and it's more of like hey, we get this for a year, and then it's coming to PC, then after 2 years it comes here. It can come to any other platform.
Yeah.
Could be something like that. I don't know, but
yeah, that's kind of the weird thing with Persona. Like, I'm not sure if it was like the Yakuza series where Sony didn't pay for it, they just didn't put it on other consoles, or if PlayStation did, in fact, pay for exclusivity for it. I don't know if they did, but they might have with Persona 5, because that one seems to be the odd one out where we haven't heard really anything. But I think it'll come. It'll come before Final Fantasy VII Remake does. You can guarantee that at this rate. But
yeah. They keep paying for exclusivity on that one, so it's like, yeah, give it another year. Well, let's do it. What's another million? Well, several million.
Yeah.
But anyway. Okay. So our next question. Oh, hold up, Frodo. Jeez. All right. That is my cat, Frodo. You may have seen him. You may have not seen him. Okay. This question is, what's up with all these Sony acquisitions lately? From the PA66.
What that is a broad question. Well,
you want to recap that first in terms of what's happened?
Yeah. Okay. So basically, in a 2-week block, PlayStation announced the acquisition of Housemarque, which is the longtime studio that did, games like Reshogun and Returnal. And they also picked up a PC port studio that did a lot of work with Square Enix, which was Nixxes. Now, people have been conjecturing about what this means for the direction of PlayStation and everything else. And we're obviously going to get into that. But what people are kind of getting it now, but a lot of people aren't, is that PlayStation and Xbox are locking down partners that they work with a lot or they have good relationships with, because it's a buyer's market right now. And it's a buyer's market. It doesn't matter if you're Embracer Group, Tencent, NetEase, which is another Chinese-based company, which people remember has a stake in Bungie. So Bungie could maintain their independence, in quotations. And that's kind of the direction things are going. Is there's a lot of big groups with a lot of money that are buying up a lot of stuff right now. So for PlayStation right now, it's locking down partners, because friendships and partnerships are great. Having a great relationship with a company and working almost exclusively together is great. But eventually someone will throw a money bag so big in their face, they go, you know what? Friendship isn't that important. We need to get this bag.
Yeah. And like also too, I want to preface that, or really not preface, more supplement it. So like you mentioned before, it's a buyer's market right now, and this is more of an economic situation where we're in a period of inflation. For those who have not taken economics, which appears to be most gamers at this point, so that means that the value of the dollar and the currency is going down. As a result, the best way to combat that is actually to invest in companies and in other products that are going to have a potential return on investment. So the idea is, if I have $100 and I just hold on to that $100 and keep it in the bank for 10 years, that $100 is actually going to lose value, because there's normally about a 3% inflation rate every year. And so the actual value of that $100 will go down in terms of buying power. So what you do to combat that is, let's say I take that $100 and buy stocks. And that opens up an opportunity for me, at least for me, to combat the devaluing of the dollar, because I have my money placed in something else that could potentially grow.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get some benefit out of it. And so that's why you're going to see not just Microsoft and Sony buying things, but other companies are going to start joining this push into gaming and really whatever else is out there. So I'm not at all surprised by that. That's why you're seeing a lot of big money fly around.
Mm-hmm.
And not just from them. I mean, just yesterday, for the day of this recording, they just had an announcement that Facebook's going to get into gaming. Oh no, sorry, no, not Facebook. Netflix is going to get into gaming. They hired, is it Matt Verdu, I think?
Yep.
Or
formerly of EA.
Yeah. He used to work for EA and then moved over to Facebook Gaming, and then now is working at Netflix. And so, don't be surprised if Netflix starts getting involved, which will be very interesting to see. But that's why you're seeing a lot of people throw money around outside of just Microsoft and Sony.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And you look at THQ Nordic is another one, or Embracer Group is the parent company, and they've bought up tons and tons of not only studios but also IP, because what they've realized is, if instead of sitting on all this money, is if they invest in really cheap IP, they can turn out games that do decently well, make their money back and then some. And it's a good forward investment. It's very much like what you said with the economics. You're taking your $100 and you're turning it not necessarily into $300, but maybe $130, $140. But if you do that across 20, 30 studios, you're going to make it to $300 one way or another. But yeah, I just think it makes sense. Like, I don't understand the obsession with necessarily everything needs to be acquired. I like studios like, Ninja Theory, who is in financial trouble, getting picked up, studios like Obsidian being picked up. Insomniac Games for PlayStation made a ton of sense because of all the, well, it's the proof's in the pudding for Insomniac games. I'm sorry, the PlayStation 5 launch would literally be nothing without Insomniac games. I'm sorry, a Demon Souls remake is not does not, counter the fact that, you had Spider-Man Miles Morales and then Ratchet and Clank 6-7 months later.
Yep.
So I think, the proof's in the pudding of what they want to do. And I think there's just a lot of people still really very much in denial of PlayStation's direction. Like,
Yep.
we're going to talk about it later with, the Steam Deck and everything else that we saw revealed today, but you're going to be able to play your PlayStation and Xbox games on the go via that thing, via Steam. So you're going to see some money there. We've seen Horizon Zero Dawn do incredibly well on PC. Days Gone did okay on PC. They made some money there. Nobody's leaving money on the table anymore. Game development's getting more expensive. Everything's inflating in cost. You need to find a way to make more money, and PC ports are a great way to make money.
Yeah. It's a good way to make money. You're right. Especially because they've proven that people will buy them.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I know we've been saying this for years in terms of this. Exclusives are only good for so long. Eventually, people start wondering, what if I can make some more money? So,
Yeah.
but hey, that's always a question you gotta ask. But so I'll ask a follow-up question for you, Nick. Who do you think they would pick up next? And you can't say Blue Point. That's such an obvious one.
Mm-hmm. So for me personally, if Sony is picking up studios, there's one I know they'd love to pick up, but it's not going to happen. And then there's the most obvious one to me. The most obvious one for me would be Arc System Works as an acquisition, for the simple reasons they bought Evo. If they buy Arc System Works, you've got a good corner of the fighting market outside of basically Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat. That pretty much sums up almost all the fighting games, and of course, Smash Brothers. But Sony will eventually buy Nintendo. You heard it here first. But the studio, I think PlayStation wished that they had purchased. I would love to say it was Ready at Dawn. But that's Facebook now, and that makes me so incredibly sad because the Order 1886 deserved better. But
Yep.
what we're gonna see, what Sony regrets probably the most, is not picking up Remedy. When it was floating around that Remedy was, could potentially be acquired and everything else, I feel like PlayStation and Xbox kind of threw a little bit at that, and they were like, yeah, maybe. And then Remedy signed all these deals for publishing and everything else. Like, we know what Remedy's doing for the next 6 to 8 years in terms of publishing deals and everything else they've got on their plate. So even if PlayStation was to buy them, they wouldn't be able to get quote unquote exclusive games for 2027, 2026. That's not,
Maybe a while.
yeah, it's not really PlayStation's MO to do something like that. So if I was going to say they're going to pick up a studio, it's Arc System Works, because it'd be a cheaper one. It expands their global influence, and it caters specifically to a genre that they seem to be nurturing.
Yeah. I mean, that brings a good point. I mean, it is possible for them to still pick up Remedy. Let's not pretend like you could buy out a contract.
Mm-hmm.
You could do that, but that's a lot of money. I don't know. I don't know what they would do. For me, I think that they would just try to go for an actual multiplayer studio. I don't know who off the top of my head. 'Cause, I mean, there's not a lot of people who aren't really locked down. But I think that's kind of why you're seeing them really push on, hey, look, we got three new studios who have no games whatsoever, who have not done absolutely nothing together, and they're gonna work on some multiplayer stuff. Enjoy.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of why. But I think what they want to do is a tired phrase. They want to sample the milk without buying the cow, kind of thing. Like, hey, let's see if you're actually any good. If you're great, awesome, we'll talk. If you're not, We'll pretend you don't exist.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's a great point. It was brought up. I think it was brought up by Sam when we were talking about this on Gaming Perspective, and he brought up Ilphonic, which did Friday the 13th, and they also did Predator Hunting Grounds as well. Now, with that being said, PlayStation did say, as per Sam, this is what Sam told us, is that Predator Hunting Ground did make PlayStation money. Believe it or not, that game did actually break even and make money, which is
Did they launch it on Plus? Did they do that?
no, no, I
Yeah.
don't think so because I'd have it if it was on Plus. I canceled my pre-order after playing the demo. But Gio Corse is part of Ilphonic, and he was a huge part of PlayStation for many years. So if there was ever a multiplayer studio,
Wait. I actually do have someone to combat you on that.
okay,
Starbreeze.
wasn't
Uh,
Starbreeze was bought by Embracer Group though, wasn't it?
yeah, that's the only downside of that. But that would have been a good pickup for them because they got Payday 2, Dead by Daylight. Like they do multiplayer games, and those Dead by Daylight still succeeds.
Yeah,
They're still supporting that game.
yeah,
It's clearly making money. And Payday 2, I mean, they stealth announced Payday 3 at E3. So I
yeah.
mean, like, if you put like some story people on that, like just to add some little elements here and there, those would be great games. They would evolve beyond the AA to like the AAA status.
Yeah, yeah. Payday 3 with a budget.
Yeah, I'm like, jeez.
Yeah, no, I'd be there for that. But yeah, I definitely think it'll be leaning more into a niche. I don't think they need to buy another third person action game focused studio. I think they're good on that. And that's why I'm
Yep.
okay with them not buying Remedy, is because Remedy makes PlayStation style games outside of being PlayStation. And that's
Yeah.
fine.
I mean, because that's the thing. Like, you have what was it? The little graphic that they put up there. I find it funny because they're doing the whole Microsoft thing where it's like, hey, we have a slice, and each slice has one game from every studio that we have. And like Xbox has a lot of different colors, a lot of different types, and it's like, okay, these are a lot of different types of games here. But PlayStation had a lot of gray and their little graphic, and a lot of games that are very similar, at least in terms of how they are. They're third person cinematic type games, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it really highlights that like a third of PlayStation studios make similar aesthetic style games,
Absolutely.
and it's like it doesn't highlight that in terms of where that is. Like that's why you kind of see like they put those games towards the middle behind the graphic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so behind the logo, it's like, oh yeah, look at that.
Yeah.
Because they were trying to highlight the diversity of their portfolio,
Yeah.
and they need to work on that.
Yeah.
So
And I think a few small purchases will help diversify that and maybe revive some IP that would provide some more color. Sly Cooper is literally right there.
yeah,
Um, you know,
more stealth games, man.
yeah, more stealth games. But I think that kind of wraps up the PlayStation, where they're focusing anyway in terms of
Yeah.
acquisitions and moving forward.
All right. Our fourth question. I'm censoring this name. Um, you could probably figure it out. Do you think Xbox is starting to get a hold in the Japanese market from Duck Daddy? You can figure that one out.
Yeah, well, Duck Daddy is absolutely quackers for one thing. There's my one dad joke in episode. Prepare for those. Um, the thing is that Xbox primarily has never done well in Japan. Like OG did okay, 360 did alright, and Xbox One was just absolutely terrible because it does not appeal to anything about the Japanese market. Now we're seeing an uptick in sales of Xbox in Japan, but I think people are getting a little too ahead of themselves with it because you got to remember when they're doing number comparisons, they're comparing Xbox One to Xbox Series X first of all. So if Xbox Series X is doing, 400% better than Xbox One, it's like, yeah, so you're selling 400 instead of 40 or whatever the case may be. Like the comparison's not great. But there is specific things in the Xbox portfolio that kind of cater more to the Japanese market now. xCloud, if they can get that more global and everything else with Game Pass and everything, the mobile market in Japan and Asia in general is massive. And I think like maybe not the Series X, but the Series S is a smart thing for them because once again, small, compact.
Form factor.
Yeah, because like the PS5 feels like the most PS5's doing really well in Japan, but traditionally in the Japanese market, the bigger the console, the less successful it is because of space constraints.
Yeah. And like, and I guess we'll talk about it now, I guess. So like when it comes to like the whole size of the console, like it's just, and like people will say anything about the design itself. I mean, I think the design looks cool, like as an art piece, but you got whole marketing teams that don't even know how you're supposed to set this thing up. Like twice, even Herman Holst got called out for having his PlayStation upside down. And it's like, okay, either this means one of two things. Either he really doesn't play games very often, which I don't think is true.
No.
Or like that was a whole marketing PR thing of like, oh look, I'm playing a game. Look at me. And it was like already set up. It was like, oh shit. It's like, it's in the wrong spot. All right, we need to fix that.
How to tell you only play digital games on your console. Your disc drive's upside down.
Yeah, it stands out. And like they had the whole ad that came out where like they showed it upside down again, where it's like it's not understandable. And like I don't know, it's kind of a weird thing there. And I don't hold it against PlayStation, but it's not intuitive enough for individuals to figure it out. So, and yeah. And the fact that you actually have to like put on like this whole plate in order to figure out which is the bottom, and like you have to screw it in and all that kind of stuff is just weird.
Who uses a plate? I just took it out of the box, stood it up on my desk, and away I went.
Yeah, well,
I didn't leave it on the floor like a heathen though, Nick. I know you're watching this.
Nick Marseille, aka Creepy Bunny. I will not forget. And you know what? I win because you finally got it off the ground, you piece of shit. Treat it with some respect. All right. But yeah, I guess back to the topic though that we're actually discussing. So in terms of the Japanese market, I mean, yeah, Xbox is doing better, and we've seen like Phil's taken like a really big push into trying to figure out, okay, we're gonna have these individuals, like we're not individuals, we're gonna have these games, and like really making an effort to get those games that were not locked down by PlayStation for exclusivity, and I think that's important. But I wouldn't say that they're like taking over Japan or anything like that. I mean, I think they do have a strategy, of course, but I think it's more about like just regaining a respectable foothold more than anything else. It's not like we're gonna take Japan from Sony. No, well, nothing like that.
Yeah, no, and honestly, like Nintendo owns Japan. Like PlayStation and Xbox numbers aren't anything compared to Switch numbers because that hybrid console just it fits perfectly to what people want over there in that particular buying market. I definitely think Xbox is trying to expand its market because the Xbox is doing really well in North America. It's kind of still getting beaten around in Europe a lot. But Europe, I think, is a market that could change. Japan is always going to be a struggle for Xbox. But I do think they're making smart moves over there, and having Tango Gameworks as part of their first party studios, being a Japanese studio, potential Kojima partnership in the future. They're making the right moves to kind of make more people interested in what the console has to offer, which means more games and more ideas being thrown around and everything else, which is ultimately what we want.
Yeah. So, what I will say is I think that they are, well, Xbox, or I should say Microsoft. Like, I would, just so I can make the distinction here. We understand that my Xbox is larger than just the actual Xbox. I'm going to say Microsoft for now, just to kind of hammer in a point. I think that Microsoft is largely focusing on not trying to win the console space, but trying to win the PC space in Japan.
Mm.
One of the things that happened over the last month or so, we saw a report that Microsoft is not, was it not, sorry, that the Japanese PC base is exploding right now. Traditionally, the Japanese are not interested in PC gaming. It just hasn't been a thing until recently. We saw large increases over there, and that is a very important thing to note. And the thing about PC gaming is that, at least in terms of storefronts, Steam still dominates, especially, we're pretty much worldwide. Steam dominates. But in a market where they don't really have any outside connection, they don't have an allegiance to anybody right now. But if you can get them on Game Pass as a focus and say, hey, you already got Game Pass, you already own half of these games, why would you go somewhere else to buy them?
Mm-hmm.
Might as well buy them here through our store. Makes sense. You save some money. You get to have a store. You don't even know Steam Schmeem. You don't know who that is. Doesn't
Right.
matter. But you know Microsoft. We got games. We got Game Pass.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have a potential there to actually foster a whole new market and really take home the bacon. Like,
Yeah.
you could really help out on your own platform by bringing in this group of people who don't really have any sort of allegiance to anybody. And clearly, because Sony's not competing, they won't commit to anything right now. It's like, oh yeah, we'll bring a game out to PC. We don't have a platform or a store for it, but we'll just bring it to Steam. But there's no guarantee of when it's going to come out. You know it's going to come sometime, but you don't know
Mm-hmm.
when. So it's like, hey, Microsoft, you know day and date. Here it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think the Asian market, just going forward in general, not necessarily just speaking Xbox, is going to be really interesting. We've seen some of the games that are coming out of China and everything else. And obviously, you look at some games they've taken over that were sensations. You look at the success of PUBG, and China drove a huge amount of the success of PUBG originally. And that's across the PC and the mobile space. And I can definitely see both Microsoft and Sony playing into that a lot more, especially with some of their bigger titles and everything else. What I'm really interested in, and I know this is kind of branching off of the topic a bit, is when Sony's finally going to bite the bullet and make a PlayStation storefront. Because they've got the brand loyalty. And I know people on PC don't like more storefronts. I'm right there with them. I only have 2 storefronts installed on my PC. But if you were like, this is the only place you can play God of War, this is the only place you can play Horizon Zero Dawn Forbidden West, whatever the case may be, people download. They'd use that, and then they wouldn't have to give Steam a cut, so to speak. And like the thing is too is like PlayStation has that branding, right? It's not like Ubisoft's Uplay where it's like Ubisoft being like, "Hey, you could just buy your games from us," and we're like, "Why though? Why would we?"
You say that, and like that's not a bad idea. But I would say, like, okay, right now, what's Sony's production level?
in,
How many
ter-
games are they pumping out a year?
in terms of PC or just
In general, just I'm saying in general, across the board.
I don't know.
Games that they make.
They make I don't know, maybe like 10 a year. Like if you're talking like making, then yeah. But
Well, I mean, making. Like they own the studio, they made the game.
Oh, far less than 10 then.
Like two, three, maybe.
In terms of their first party, yeah, that'd probably be a pretty safe
Yeah,
bet. Two, three, four, maybe.
yeah. I don't think, at least right now, unless they start buying up a bunch of studios to really pump up production, I don't think they're in a place to really succeed in that. But what I can see them doing, partnering up with Epic. Even though they're having issues with Epic right now and complaining, for those who know what I'm talking about, there was the court case that was still what? How they get it? Not a verdict yet? Did they have a verdict for Apple versus
I don't know.
I know they finished deliberations. I know they finished that, but I don't remember if they had an actual verdict being reached. I think we would have heard about that. But
Yeah.
um, anyway, other than that, there were a couple of court documents that came out that where they found out that like Sony was charging Epic for having crossplay,
Yeah.
and they're doing it to more than just them, and like so it came out, and what Sony had to go get it stricken from the record. But I always find the whole stricken from the record thing just absurd as a concept. It's like they already said it's too late unless it's a
Yeah.
lie.
Yeah.
But the documents are already out. We already know what happened. Like it's kind of over there. But what I mean by that, so yeah, there's a little bit of animosity between them. But like if I recall correctly, Sony invested money in Epic.
Twice.
They put money
Twice
in them
as well.
Yeah.
They've done it
So
twice
they've
now.
actually they put money in it, and Epic's also not charging nearly as much as Steam is.
Yeah.
Where like Steam's normally doing what? They're doing like 20 or 30% or something like that.
Steam is 30%. Epic Game Store is 12%, I believe.
Yeah, so I mean, hey, you cut it out there. They may say like, hey, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, boo boo. No more crossplay fees for you.
Yeah.
They may do something like that. So I think it's dumb, but whatever. But that would make sense where it's like if they partner with that and say this is where you can is the only place you can get Sony games, that would benefit Epic Game Store quite a bit. And you have a potential for so maybe some partnerships, maybe a buyout. Who knows? Like you have options there. So and like Epic did all the work.
Yeah.
Trying to prove a name for themselves, and Sony could swoop in, and that'd be a good investment for them. Was it? They had like an estimate of like a couple trillion they could spend over the next few years. Could work.
Yeah.
That'd be a good buy.
Yeah. Who knows what the future may hold? I don't see anyone buying Epic Games anytime soon.
Nah,
they print money, and they're too intertwined with so much other stuff that I get. You know what I say? They couldn't do it. They're too intertwined in the industry, and then you look at Bethesda and go, okay, no rules apply anymore. It doesn't matter. Anything can happen. So I won't rule it out, but it definitely seems far off. But I think to wrap up the original question, I think the growth in Japan is promising, but people should not read too much into the tea leaves quite yet.
Yeah. All right. So our last fan submitted question, Steam Deck. So it's proprietary hardware that doesn't allow you to upgrade parts. Is it still PC gaming, or is it just a console, or is it a handheld? Brought to you by Peasantry Kev.
God damn it, Kev.
Yep.
So, okay, the proprietary hardware thing, yeah, it's a console. I can't swap stuff out in it. I can't change it. It's a console. It's a Steam handheld console. This is Steam's 3DS or Game Boy Color, or it looks more kind of... Yeah, it looks like a Switch. I'm sorry. I am all for the idea of the thing because, it's going to be the first handheld since the Vita that has good games. But the thing is like, it looks uncomfortable as hell, first of all. It looks so goddamn awkward. Like, I had a Steam controller, and it was like the weirdest thing. And people use so many excuses for those controllers. It was like JRPGs. They're like, yeah, the first 40 hours suck, but afterwards it's really great. And it's like, no, I don't need to use a controller for 40 hours to then think it's good. But it's an interesting value proposition. and you look at the quality and the hardware they're tossing into it for the price point, when we just, last week we were all talking about, the new Switch's value proposition, and it's kind of wild to see the differences. But it is a handheld console. I'm sorry. Unless I could swap a new NVIDIA card into it or anything else, it's not PC gaming. It's using Steam as an app through a mobile handheld console.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the only thing I know for certain is that they're definitely including it so that you have like their own like cards you could put in, not like graphics cards, but like storage cards.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could do that, and so I mean that's cool, I guess. But yeah. Um,
It's also
I'm
dockable
interested.
too.
Yep.
Which is
So
wild.
I'm interested. I'm not gonna lie, I'm interested. But yeah. Not for me personally. Cause I had a Switch for about 2 years. About 2 years. Like it was fun, but it just wasn't not my kind of gaming. I don't really when I go out, I'm not normally the type who like whips out their phone and plays on their phone or anything. I'm just kind of like I'm living the moment with them with my cell phone's away, no nothing in front of me, just living right there underneath the sun.
Wait, you're telling me you don't go down to the court and instead of hooping, you sit there and play NBA 2K on your Switch? You're telling me you don't feel the random urge to sit in your hallway and play Pokemon?
Nope, not anymore. Was the last Pokemon game I played was Pokemon Blue when it got really fun to do in college all of a sudden.
Hmm.
When everyone was like, yeah, the 90s and early 2000s were the best. And when everyone went out to like the used shops and bought Game Boy Advances and SPs to play Pokemon Blue or Red or oh my gosh, that was
I
weird.
feel incredibly called out by all of that, except I still had my childhood SP. I still have my
Oh, I had
Game
mine
Boy.
too.
Yeah.
I had mine too. I can't in good conscience sell my SP.
No.
Can't do it.
No, it's
That,
like the
that that was the perfect Game Boy.
yeah. No, that
After that, it was over.
yeah. No, I bought my wife a 2DS, I think it was, and she had a DS as well, but like they just never captured the Game Boy SP experience. Like I went from Game Boy Color to Game Boy SP, and that step was just so good. Um,
Yep.
but
What was it for me? I had the Game Boy Color.
mhm.
That was my first one. I had a purple one. Um, and then I had Game Boy Advance, and I had a silver one initially. That broke. No, my brother had the silver one. I had the clear one where you can see the inside, but it was like a slight purple tint. And then I went from that to the SP, and I had the silver one. That was so good.
Yep.
Like going on long trips and like trying to play by streetlight like a caveman, like like just like play a little bit, and then moving to the SP, you're like long trip, no lights, cover the hood.
Yeah, that was
That
like the
was
big step up. I remember because I had a Game Boy Color and I had the stupid side light attachment. Actually, you could get like
oh, I
little.
remember that too.
It was like
The
it.
glare.
Oh, it was so bad. But I was like, I'm gonna get Charizard to level 100 one way or another. Um, but yeah, I think the Steam handheld it's interesting. I need to see it in action more because everything sounds amazing on paper. I need to physically hold
Mhm.
one and everything else. Like the value, like in terms of money spent for what you're getting, I'm okay with it. I'm interested in it, but I'm gonna wait for one of my dumb friends with way too much money to buy one so I can physically try it before I buy it.
Yeah, it looks cool. I'm not sure about those triggers though. I was the thing about handhelds and triggers. I've never appreciated them. There's always something weird about it. I just the form factor is weird. I gotta see it for myself.
And
Try it.
that's why
But
this is still the greatest handheld of all time. Goddamn PlayStation Vita triggers. You buy a little case for it, you put it in there. Amazing triggers. Fantastic. Um,
I'll take your word for it.
yeah, me and the other 5 people with PlayStation Vitas still. Um,
You, Colin Moriarty, and 3 randoms.
basically.
Oh
Um,
no, no, you could probably name the rest of them too. Who else is on Colin's podcast? Chris Raygun, Dustin. Who else? Sam have a Vita?
no, I don't know.
No, there's got to be somebody else who has a Vita. We know there's at least five. So,
Oh man, but yeah, no. It's interesting, and the fact people are like, oh, with Xbox Game Pass, this kind of makes it an Xbox handheld. And you remember we heard those rumors about Steam and Xbox being in cahoots about something, and everyone was like, "Oh, it has to be
what do
Steam
you
on
mean?
it." And everyone's like, "It has to be Steam coming as an app to Xbox." And I'm like, "It's never that simple. It's never that easy." But I think you're about to see what the partnership deal is going to be in the next couple of weeks.
Mm. Interesting times. Interesting times. All right. Are you ready to move into our real topic for the evening?
Yeah,
Or
so
day or morning? What time? What time does it go live again?
it goes live at 8 a.m. even though technically we're recording at night. Because
Yeah.
there's no way
Sun's out. It's not night yet.
there is no way in cold hell you will ever catch me podcasting at 8 o'clock in the morning live.
No. What do you mean? Clearly, your window right there is facing east, and the sun is rising, and I'm wet from a shower I took this morning. So clearly, it's Friday morning.
The time zone thing doesn't work here. So yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about Ubisoft Assassin's Creed. This has been obviously beaten to death, very much like the Assassin's Creed formula the past few years. But, you know, the topic was around, there was a Jason Schreier report released, and it talked about a upcoming game called Assassin's Creed Infinity, which, okay, Halo Infinite, Assassin's Creed Infinity, come on, guys. If you want to
Well, I
make...
thought Disney Affinity personally.
Wow, you're like what? This is like the Vita thing, but different. But basically, Jason Schreier came out and said, you know, Assassin's Creed Infinity is going to be this live service Assassin's Creed game and everything else. And then Ubisoft put out a blog post a couple hours later stating that it was going to feature a bunch of big leads and that they were consolidating the studios that worked on Assassin's Creed, and that was no longer going to be a studio per studio kind of venture with Assassin's Creed, and that Assassin's Creed Infinity represented them consolidating in one cohesive vision for Assassin's Creed, and that they had a wealth of Valhalla related content still to come for people that love that. So what that screams to me, first off, is that Valhalla's getting DLC until 2022 into the late part, because there's no way they're going to go a full 2-3 years without releasing something Assassin's Creed related. So a couple of nuanced things here. Number one is Jason Schreier said that this project was still in the early stages. Things could change, and that this was not something that was set in permanent stone quite yet, and games can change over the years. Common sense indicates that would be a correct assumption. Number two, a lot of people brought up is that a handful of the leads on this Assassin's Creed project were people that were publicly named and shamed in some of the abuse allegations leveled against Ubisoft. And Ubisoft's only response to that was people were reprimanded accordingly by a third-party company. And that's all they stated on the matter.
You know what? That's what I want to be. I want to be that third-party company just to go like, shame on you, shame, shame, shame. Pay me $1 million for the consultant fee.
Yeah. So we'll cover the human element first. You know, Ubisoft's been... I could say this. Ubisoft's been kind of a shit show publicly the past year. And, you know, things have kind of been falling out of place for them. You know, we had all the stuff with some of the leads. Like, we're talking all the way up to, like, you know, studio heads and everything else being involved in stuff that was not great. We had, you know, the whole blowout with the one PR lead who was, basically being like, "Hey, if you sleep with me, I'll give you review codes," and that was a whole thing.
Tell
So
me when and where. I'm in.
I,
I'll be the big spoon.
Ivan will sell ass for Assassin's Creed Valhalla DLC codes. Um,
Yeah. I'm not paying for it. So
Good God. But ultimately, there's been a lot of criticism leveled at Ubisoft, and it kind of felt like they hunkered down and kind of went quiet about it. So a lot of people are thinking they were doing some stuff internally, reshuffling, et cetera, et cetera. We saw some big people leave. Not a bad looking out set, but to then hear this big announcement with a bunch of people that were not like casually, coulda, shoulda, were publicly named as problems, still being associated and leading new projects. Um, Kind of troubling because it makes me really think Ubisoft really hasn't done anything internally, and that
I mean, they're still French. I mean, it's a different cultural level at that point. Like it's, and I don't mean to sound like a nationalist hater, but it's a different set of morals and a different set of standards, and we as English speaking Canadians and Americans don't get it. It's just not going to be the same kind of thing. Like where here that thing would, but those allegations would end careers if it was here in the United States.
mhm.
There, like I said, what's a shame thing. Like, well, we'll forget about it in 2 years.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I worry about it because more onto like what the future of Assassin's Creed might look like is they're talking about consolidating studios. They're putting all these people together to make a cohesive Assassin's Creed game. On paper, I'm all for that. But the thing is if you're making a cohesive quote unquote live service focused game, we know from games like Destiny, Fortnite, all the big service games, you need to have a really well put together studio behind that working cohesively together. And if you've got leadership that, just because they didn't get tried or thrown out or whatever, it kind of makes me worry for what the quality of this might be if they have a lot of turnover because of this or anything else. Like, it's kind of concerning culturally wise. And I know people spend way too much time worrying about studio culture because they're like, well, The Last of Us Part 2 was amazing. Who cares if they locked people in a California basement for 3 years of their lives? We got a good game out of it, so it's fine. But eventually, that stuff will affect the game one way or another.
yeah, but like, okay, even going even further about the stuff with Ubisoft, like even outside just the allegation stuff, Ubisoft's been in trouble for a while now.
Mm-hmm.
And like some stuff is little, but some stuff is major. You remember after Ghost Recon Breakpoint, where that game came out totally broken,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a bad game.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, Ubisoft said, "All right, we're not canceling, but we're indefinitely postponing everything until we fix this."
Mm-hmm.
Where that's why they pushed back Watch Dogs. They were like, "We have to deal with this,"
Mm-hmm.
and they pushed back Watch Dogs till 2020. Like that was a long push. And COVID had part of it to do with it, but not entirely. It wasn't just COVID. So, like there's some development level stuff that's going on as a problem there too. Or what was it, Beyond Good and Evil 2 getting announced like in what, 2016, 2017 or something like that?
I think it was
I can't remember
2017.
what year it was. And then we've heard nothing about it. Like we haven't heard a single update in like the last 2 years. And it's like, okay, what's going on here?
Skull and Bones.
Like,
The Sea of
yeah, Skull
Thieves
and
killer.
Bones.
The Sea of Thieves killer.
Yeah.
And, where that's turned.
Mm-hmm. So it's there's a lot of things going on a developmental level with Ubisoft, and like some things, again, like some things are their fault, and some things are not their fault. Like, what was it? Rainbow Six Extraction used to be called, what was it?
Quarantine.
Quarantine. and then that thing got delayed. And again, this was a Ubisoft problem. That thing got delayed all the time.
Hmm.
They were gonna have that thing out, like, was it 2016, 17? No, it was it was originally supposed to be like 2018, I want to say. And then it kept getting pushed back, and then COVID happened, and they rebranded to Parasite, they rebranded to Extraction. It did not work out in their favor at all. There's a lot of stuff going on at Ubisoft.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
so
So let's talk a little bit more about. I want to touch on the human element just for the sake of it because you can't talk about it without it. But I kind of want to talk about the future of Assassin's Creed really, because as you've mentioned so eloquently before, is like Ubisoft has kind of had a problem with pulling the trigger and necessarily delivering on what fans wanted. Because I'll use Ghost Recon as a perfect example because I'm a massive fan of the franchise. Ghost Recon Wildlands was perfect to me. It was like I'm playing with my friends. It's tactical. It's as tactical as you want it to be. It was a drop in, drop out. It was fun. It wasn't a traditional Ghost Recon game, but it was a fun twist on a Ghost Recon game. And then they did Breakpoint, and it was like, who told you we wanted the Division 2.3? Like, you just released the Division 2, and now you're giving us Breakpoint, and Breakpoint's trying to do the exact same thing the Division's doing. There was no one that was playing Wildlands and went, wow, I really wish this had a Destiny style loot grind to it. Like, nobody said that, but they did that. And this is kind of my fear with Assassin's Creed. Like, I will admittedly admit that was a terrible use of words. Um, I I have not played an Assassin's Creed game since Assassin's Creed 3. That's when the series lost me, and because Assassin's Creed 3 was just awful. It's just terrible. Um, Connor was incredibly bland, and I cannot get past that. They could have done so much with him, and he was just angry. Um, I lost out with Assassin's Creed since they went the RPG route, went like with
Origins.
Origins, and they're like, "Hey, look, we played The Witcher 3, and we think you should too." Um, it's cool. A lot of people latched onto that, and Valhalla's been incredibly successful. It's been the most successful Assassin's Creed game in the franchise's history. So obviously they're doing something right there. You have been playing Valhalla, and you've loved it so far, correct?
Oh, I beat it. I beat it. Actually, a couple days ago.
Mm.
But yeah, I'll give you a little backstory. So for me, I've played every single Assassin's Creed, every single mainline Assassin's Creed game since 2. So I played 2, Brotherhood, Revelations, 3, Black Flag, Syndicate, Unity, the Origins, Odyssey, Valhalla. I've played all the mainline ones. I'll play Rogue, and I didn't play Liberation,
Mm.
mainly just because I wasn't interested in those.
Right.
But Assassin's Creed kind of has like two main camps, and this is like you can say it's about pretty much any game, where there are people who want the old school back, and there are people who want the new.
Mm-hmm.
And I see both, and I've played them. I've enjoyed them all for different reasons. I even like Unity. I thought Unity had something there. You could definitely see they were inspired by a Destiny type model where it was like, hey, like, what if you have a class and you like specialize in one thing and you party up with your friends and you do missions together and you don't do missions together and you have single player stuff and multiplayer stuff and raids and they kind of like experimented with that. And I think the main problem with that was just the wasn't the graphics were bad, but it was just the technical side was not quite there yet with Unity,
Mm-hmm.
and it chugged, and I think that's the main problem with it. Other than that, I thought it was fine.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the main problem that all of the camps kind of agree with is the modern day story is non-existent. After 3, it's gone. Like they kind of like tease around a bunch of stuff. Um, I'll go like all right, what 3 came out in what, 2010, 2011? It's been 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Might be 12. I don't remember. But it's been a long enough time. You can have modern day spoilers. It's not a big deal. Um, the whole story arc with Desmond was, it was like a plot device, but I really liked the modern day aspect of it. It tied everything together and it made sense. And then after 3, what was it? Desmond gets a choice of either save the world and die, or save the world and die, or let the world burn and become the equivalent of a god.
Hmm.
And they give him that choice, and he chooses to sacrifice his life and save the world, but it doesn't guarantee being safe in the future for the rest of the world. There's still problems are going to happen, and like they had like this whole plot line with like the AI Juno kind of out there indefinitely, and like they cut that storyline out with like a web comic, and it's, oh yeah, she's dead, don't worry about it, it's gone. Um, and like just the rest of it's just kind of been floating around, and it's like, what are we doing? Like I don't even remember what Unity was about, but I remember at least the modern day stuff. But like Black Flag, you're playing as an Abstergo employee working for on a game, like a video game studio. You're doing research, and it's like cool, but it's like, what does this have to do with anything else?
Hmm.
And just like I because the Syndicate was kind of the same way. Like they're building, they talk about like sages as a concept, or just people who have uh, their DNA is closely aligned with people who were like for the precursor group or race or whatever they were. Their DNA is close to them, and so they normally have excess physical abilities or visions, or they're just special. Is the main point. And like the rest of the series after that just kind of like didn't really do anything. But then like Origins, I didn't like, they introduced like Layla Hassan. They introduced her as like a new main character. She's okay, not great, but it's hard to be when they make you don't care about the modern day stuff for so long.
Hmm.
But I have finished Valhalla at this point, which is the last of her little trilogy, and they have ended off at a point where now the modern day segments are interesting now,
Hmm.
and now they have something they're building towards, and I'm very interested. I want to see where this goes really bad. Um, and I can kind of see where, if they want to go with Assassin's Creed Infinity route, where they could go with it now.
Hmm.
Um, I think by what we mean by like, Infinity is more of like making Assassin's Creed like this platform game where I assume they would do like yearly updates and yearly things. Um, but I think the way to make it all have a connected tissue is you are playing as modern day assassins. I think that's the way they could tie it all together narratively, and then having yearly or semi-yearly or whatever, just like saying, okay, hey, here's a new program we want you to run. You're gonna go to 18th century Scotland or something like that.
Hmm.
You could definitely pull something off like that, and I don't know. Let's say, okay, then like next year you're gonna go to like 5th century Persia, or
Hmm.
like something crazy like that. You have options available to you, so I could see narratively where it could work.
Hmm.
I just don't know how people would receive it if it's a done deal situation.
Yeah, so there kind of seems to be two kind of camps on this, like you said. There's the people that enjoy where the series is at now, and there's people like me who love the way the series was before. And with Infinity, yeah, they could make shorter games, so people like me might be interested to play Assassin's Creed again, because they're not going to crank out an 100-hour RPG every year for Infinity. They're just simply not going to be able to do that.
Hmm.
Um, so it would probably be smaller, more invested updates and storylines and everything else. But the thing that is biting at my lip, neck, whatever, is the whole proposition of it being a platform. In order for a game to be a platform, it has to have, microtransactions. It has to make money. A live service game doesn't function without that aspect. Now there's people who do it less egregiously than others. I think Sea of Thieves, as far as I know, does a pretty good job of being a great live service game without being egregious in terms of its, money spend value. But the thing is like, I don't trust Ubisoft after some of the games they've made to not get a little too handsy with things.
Mm-hmm.
And like, if this is going to be like, it's not going to be single player anymore because no one buys cosmetics or anything like that to show off to themselves. Well, some people do.
Well, I mean, that's what Ubisoft's doing now with Assassin's Creed. Like, you can buy a ton of cosmetics, but I can't imagine you sell a ton of them. Like, I'm sure, yeah, there's gonna be some people who are gonna buy them, but I can't imagine you're selling like enough to justify a platform.
Yeah, but that's what I mean is like, unless there's a multiplayer focus to this, it doesn't make sense. So that means to me it's showing that this is a multiplayer focus, which I don't necessarily have a problem with. I just don't necessarily believe, like, how do you pivot from doing 100-hour RPG games to all of a sudden making it a live service multiplayer focused game? This feels incredibly like what they've done with every one of their other IPs is they're chasing something that's already been done a million times before, and they're not going to do it nearly as well as their competition does.
Yeah. You know what I really think this is? I think this is their attempt at Unity again. Because Unity, like I mentioned before, was their attempt at Destiny, where it was, hey, it's multiplayer, it's co-op now. You specialize in certain weapons, like you have this sort of thing. They have this like single player story you could do. Like, hey, you wanna go to the guillotine and stop an execution? You can do that. But that's kind of what I'm getting at here, where it's more of like I can see them where it's going to be a single player or multiplayer experience. It'll probably be a mixture of both, but I don't know. Again, how it would manifest in terms of like the actual world. Like, is this going to be like hey, every year we're going to change settings? Like, okay, like this was in like the one place here and change setting this year, or is it going to be like hey, this is we're going to drop like a Valhalla sized update where there's just a ton of new stuff, like whole new world, everything that's like 40 to 50 hours, and then like the next year, like in the same setting, here's a whole new storyline, like it's a smaller, like more traditional Assassin's Creed.
But the
It's in
thing
the same world.
But the thing is like Assassin's Creed, as far as I know, and I could be wrong, cycled developers so that they could always keep that pipeline of it being every year. They're talking about consolidating it between two studios now, which means it's gonna take longer. So like, unless they're going to sit there and be like, hey, here's Assassin's Creed Infinity, where you get to play new side-scrolling adventures like those spin-off games no one talks about, which were actually surprisingly good, actually. But the thing is I don't see it. When I first read the Ubisoft blog post, I thought they were trying to go for like a Final Fantasy approach, where they're going to be like, here's Assassin's Creed the RPG and here's Assassin's Creed the MMO. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense because you're using the Assassin's Creed IP to open it to a new audience. And I kind of thought that made more sense, but the more I read it, they're specifically drawing a line of, this is Valhalla, this is what you're going to get for Valhalla, and then it's Infinity afterwards. They're drawing a very clear line in the sand that, no. You're not getting other Assassin's Creed stuff. This is the Assassin's Creed stuff.
Yeah. I mean, Assassin's Creed's been used for a lot of different things. Like, did you ever play the multiplayer? I did.
Wait, no, hold on. I'm trying to think. Was it? There's one of the Ezio games had multiplayer. Which one was it? Brotherhood.
Brotherhood.
I played
Brotherhood
Brotherhood's
started it.
multiplayer. Yeah, I played Brotherhood's
Brotherhood, then
multiplayer.
Revelations, then 3. All 3 of them had multiplayer. I liked all of them. um, and I was actually really mad they got rid of it. I really enjoyed it. That was one of the games where it clicked. It was fun, and if Assassin's Creed Unity was like, hey, we got a little bit of everything for everybody. We're gonna have dedicated PvP multiplayer because that was a unique multiplayer experience.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that much. Doing like fast-paced stealth assassinations of other players, and it was like that was fun. That was a blast. One of the best feelings of the world is you're able to get to the guy and like use poison and then walk away. Then like 5 seconds later, he just collapses dead, and you're like, got it. Like that was one of the best things ever. Especially they didn't even notice you touching them.
Yeah.
It was great. That was one of the best experiences. But I want to see them do that again. But if this is the model they have to do it through, I'm fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
Preferably, what I'd like them to do is be like, okay, yeah, here's the RPG Assassin's Creed, though we support it for 2 to 3 years, but Infinity is the rest of it. Like these are your shorter campaigns, this is your multiplayer experience, this is all that. I
Yeah.
would love to see that be the focus for them, but they kind of like just go back and forth, and it's like, okay, Infinity is getting this update here to like, here's a graphical update, like whatever new RPG one comes out, they do a big graphical update so it's on par with that.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like if they could do that, that'd be great. I
Yeah.
don't know how that would work, but
I think you're kind of onto something with that because I think the thing is that blows me away, is like I'm gonna use Final Fantasy because it's the big hotness right now. You look at Final Fantasy 14, and you know they're doing amazing things with the MMO. They're eating Blizzard for lunch right now. You've got Final Fantasy 7 Remake, which is being made by a separate development team, and you have Final Fantasy 16 being made by another separate development team. And then you have like the Team Ninja game too, which doesn't feel connected at all. It's just like, hey, we can put Final Fantasy on this stamp. But what I like about those is they're giving players high quality titles in their favorite IP, but they're giving the players what they want in terms of, you know, options. Like if you like the traditional Final Fantasy games, you're going to go play Final Fantasy 16 or Remake. And if you like more of the multiplayer MMO style stuff, you're going to go play Final Fantasy 14. And with the amount of studios that Ubisoft has, there's no reason they can't do that model. And I think they would find an incredible amount of success doing that model. I just, I don't know. I just hope they do something more, or that this turns out to be some big planned out thing that they roll out. But like, I'm just kind of like nervously waiting for the shitstorm with it because they just keep doing this to themselves.
yeah, they keep killing themselves, and like that's something that I don't know what to say. I mean, the only thing there is like get new blood,
Yeah.
but like have someone who has a vision to make something unique, because like, I think like, as a whole, Ubisoft knows how to make good quality filler,
Mm-hmm.
and like because none of their games are like outright bad. You know, like, with the exception of like when one actually happens, it's bad. But like
Mm-hmm.
by default, like their games normally are like like a 7 or 8 experience normally, like out of a scale of 1 to 10.
Mm-hmm.
It's normally like that. You like a Ubisoft buy is a safe buy,
Yeah.
like in terms of quality. You know what you're getting, but it's more. I don't know. It's a weird scenario for them because I don't feel like anybody there actually has a vision for something unique.
Yeah.
I think it's more just like, hey, I'm good at this. Let's do this some more.
Well, it's almost like they have a creative idea and then they're like, how can we put it into the formula? Because
Yeah.
like you look at like Steep, Riders Republic, which is Steep 2. I don't care what anyone. Nope. I caught myself. What anybody tells me, that's Steep 2. The crew and everything else, it all follows the same build, and it's the same thing. Why, this is the company that used to give you Splinter Cell, Prince of Persia, even like the South Park games were so weird for their wheelhouse, but they did those games. Now everything has to fit into that Ubisoft formula open world. And I think that really hit home with the launch of the new consoles when they're like, hey, here's Watch Dogs Legion and Assassin's Creed Valhalla. And it's like, guys, these are feeling like they're both good games, but these games are feeling increasingly similar in their base core design. It's like what we talked about with PlayStation. You guys do other stuff, but there's starting to be a pattern of what you consistently lean on. And I just want them to break out of that. And I don't think, just being like, oh, here's a Prince of Persia remake really makes me feel good about it.
Yeah. It's weird though, right? Like Ubisoft used to be like the kings of stealth adventure games. Like they have a ton of franchises that just lean into that very well, and they just don't use them.
Yeah, I still remember like watching TV, and I can't remember what the game show was I was watching. Might have been G4 or wherever, and they're interviewing somebody for the original Assassin's Creed, and they were showing off gameplay of that. And I remember when they first revealed that game, I was like, holy hell, look at this game. Look what they're doing. Like, it was so new and fresh, and it was like, nobody has really ever done this like this before. And I feel like Ubisoft hit like 2015 and then stopped in terms of their world design. They're like, this is the peak. And everyone else has kind of moved past them now.
Yep. So. But yeah, I think they're in a really weird spot, and I don't know what to really say for that. Like, and I get like, was it Avatar Frontiers of Pandora? I get the feeling like that's like the perfect match for them, because it's a franchise that's like 10 years old that they've done nothing with. And now they're going to make a Ubisoft game.
And that looks like Far Cry with blue people.
Yeah.
That game would have been way more interesting to me if I could have been the military instead of the blue people.
Yeah.
And that game,
what it needs to be?
What?
It needs to be a platform. So what you do is you could choose to be either the Na'vi or the military, and then you could kill each other.
See, I feel
PvP Battle Royale.
I just feel it's so it feels so weird. Like, maybe Ubisoft like got the license for this, and they were like, this will coincide great with the launch of Avatar 2. And James Cameron's like, to what?
Well, no, because remember the Avatar thing is so weird, because that game, that movie came out like 2009.
Yeah.
Because I remember like everybody watched it, and I remember being like, it was one of the few movies I went back and watched multiple times in the theater.
Yep.
Like I were watching it like it's in the regular version, and I watched it in 3D, which I wear glasses. Like I'm not gonna watch a 3D movie unless it's like really worth my time. It's uncomfortable, but that was worth my time. I was like, damn, like this is great.
Yeah.
So I watched that, and I had a good time with it. But then it was like they talked, oh yeah, we're definitely gonna have sequels. It's definitely confirmed, and then nothing. Like the only thing that has happened with that franchise is Disney put it in Disney World. And that's just recently.
Yeah,
I find that so weird as a franchise of like, you didn't capitalize on this at all.
Yeah,
and this would have been huge.
Yeah, like 10 years ago, this game would have made so much sense, but they just had that, like, there is an Avatar game. There was an Avatar game on 360. I can't remember who made it, but it was one of those terrible movie tie-in games.
I want to say it was EA. That's what my brain says.
Yeah, but almost every bad movie tie-in game was published by EA. But yeah, no, they're in a weird spot.
Nope, it was Ubisoft.
Was it really?
It was Ubisoft. Oh boy.
Ay, 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 ay. Yeah, so all I can really say to wrap this up is, Ubisoft's in an interesting position, and, all this is conjecture and a blog post right now. So we're just going to have to wait and see for right now. And I guess enjoy Valhalla while we have it, and hope that the future continues to shape up well. But I have to admit, it's wild that, they're like, Assassin's Creed Valhalla is the most successful Assassin's Creed game ever. And here's why we're doing something completely different next.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we'll see.
Yep. We'll see what happens with that. But all right, we have a poll question as we close out the show.
Yep.
So our poll question, we're going to be posting this on the Twitter account as soon as we get off the show here. Question is, do you agree with Ubisoft's new alleged direction for Assassin's Creed? More specifically, because we assume most of you don't, what would make you actually get on board with it? More so if you haven't already. A, an old school Assassin's Creed stealth-based campaign, about 15 to 20 hours long, that they would release within this program, within this platform. B, a yearly RPG expansion on par with Odyssey and Valhalla. Or C, create your own Assassin GTA 5 multiplayer mode.
I think what's the most depressing part of that poll to me is if you get enough 14 and 15-year-olds involved, option C would win by a landslide.
I'm actually fine with C. I think that would make me interested personally. Like if I were in charge of designing this platform game, which I am not, if it coincidentally is like this, I had nothing to do with it. I swear, it's not my fault. Unless it's awesome, then yes, it was totally me. What I would do is I would say, okay, person at end of Valhalla, leading new generation of assassins. You are a new assassin. You create your own character. Awesome, cool, fun times. You create your own multiplayer mode, playing a simulation of sorts, random maps and modes. You're still playing as your modern day assassin character, having a good time enjoying yourself. You get to play all that stuff. Good times, hubs, running around some random city, like a new hub every season. You see other assassins have a good time. Every so often they're like, hey, we need to research this new character. He's awesome. You should research him. Plug yourself into this program. You sacrifice your created character. You play as this new person. You could do things co-op or by yourself. Play the game. Have fun. Or if you're done with the game, you can plug into the program with your friends and do whatever you want. That's what I would do for the platform.
Hey, as long as
bring back Assassin's Creed multiplayer. That's all that matters.
I just want to see Ezio dab on Altair. That's all I need in my life.
Oh my god.
Assassin dab.
Or would it be like a dab? Or
oh no.
I don't know.
What
we gotta do?
Yeah, we'll wait and see what happens. You can check out that poll. That poll will be live after this episode goes live. And yeah, that pretty much wraps up the first episode of Cheat Code Radio. So, we started off the show with viewer and listener questions or fan questions and close friend questions. So if you want to see your question featured in the show, no matter how ridiculous it might be, you can submit those to Cheat Code Radio either on Twitter, or you can also email it to us at cheatcoderadio@gmail.com. And all of this information, links to have access to, of course, us and Cheat Code Radio in general, will be in the description of this video. So I implore you guys to reach out and join the conversation with us. So we will do outros / wrap up here. Ivan, Always a good time hanging out and talking. If people are looking for you, where can they find you?
Probably on Xbox, honestly. So, but you can find me on pretty much anything at Anchorman V2. Only exception is you could find me on Twitter at Multiverse Show because screw Twitter. Uh, and you can find me. You can find my YouTube channel, Multiverse Show. We normally go live on Mondays at 7 p.m. But yeah, we're off for the summer, kind of enjoying ourselves, getting on whenever there's something that actually happens. So, good times to be had. It's kind of similar to this, but more, uh, good times, party chat kind of stuff.
Mhm.
We also stream multiverse variants on on Twitch at multiverse_show. And we mainly just talk, have a good time, play chivalry too. Doing more nonsense. So, all right.
Absolutely. And I am Nicholas Downie. You can find me on Twitter at Nicholas_Downie. And you can find all my written work over at lordsofgaming.net, from reviews, guides, and everything in between. And you can find me on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the Gaming Perspective podcast, which is a more newsroom style show. And I hope you guys enjoyed the first episode of Cheat Code Radio. And we look forward to seeing you guys next Friday at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, bright and early and bushy-tailed and all that. So we'll see you guys next time. Don't forget to submit your questions, and we'll see y'all later.